Hello, today I'm going to talk about Max Weber. So Max Weber was born in Erfurt, Germany, and some differences between his parents actually were really influential in his upbringing. So his mom was a Calvinist, which is a type of Protestant Christian, and his dad was a Jewish government bureaucrat, different religion than his mom, and not as religious at all. He was more concerned with the pleasures of here and now and our actual life, not beliefs about the afterlife. So his dad was very ambitious and trying to advance in his career. So his dad actually did end up having fairly uh, upward mobility in life, working hard as a government bureaucrat. And we'll learn about bureaucracy from Weber's point of view on subsequent slides. And Max Weber, as a student in school, was really, really good at school. So, like a really smart, hardworking student, but he wasn't as smooth socially right at first. He kind of was awkward. And when he went to college, he joined a fraternal organization. The textbook, the optional textbook of ours, doesn't specify what fraternity it was, but it was the same as his dad's. And that organization exposed him to a lot of binge drinking and stuff, and that made him more loose socially. However, he paused that after 3 terms at the University of Heidelberg. He joined the military for a year and then went to a new university, the more prestigious University of Berlin, where he finished his bachelor's degree, then became a lawyer, training for that, then passing the bar, and then in 3 more years of work, got his PhD in philosophy or history or something. The textbook also doesn't specify that. Um, but he became an academic, a professor, giving lectures and talking to other professors. In total, during his studies, he spent 8 years at the University of Berlin, finishing his bachelor's degree, getting a law degree, and then a PhD. He was a workaholic, and his complicated relationship with his parents did continue. So he kind of sometimes would side more with his mom, sometimes with his dad. And Weber himself would argue with his parents too. He argued with his dad very intensely one night, and then his dad died of a heart attack the next day, which was very sad. He had a mental breakdown that lasted the better part of a decade, which made him not as public of a professor. He wasn't teaching classes. He was kind of studying, working on his own. Uh, I guess living off of money saved up from his dad that after his dad died. Um, but he did publish his most famous work, The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, in 1905, which is a year after this big breakdown. And he had 15 more years of busy, 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 hardworking sociology, publishing, and Economy and Society is his last publication. It actually was published slightly unfinished after his death. So we're going to break down some of these concepts from Max Weber, and I probably have more text on these slides than I'm going to go into in this mini lecture, just because if you're skimming this, looking for an overall grasp of Max Weber, then hopefully I still give you the information you want. So Verstehen is a concept that means understanding in German, and Weber's speaking specifically about sociological understanding. So understanding how social dynamics work. And to kind of make a practice out of this concept of Verstehen or social understanding, sociological understanding, he used similar tools that philosophers and other scholars, even biblical scholars, used in the practice of hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is kind of the practice of interpretation. So, with religious texts or scripture, you're really breaking down God's intent or the authors of the scriptures' original intent in writing certain stories, certain things, really going into the details. And hermeneutics looks at communication as part of a relationship between speaker or listener and writer or reader, depending on if it's a speech or a talk or a book or a magazine article or whatever. Um, and understanding is a social process, so it's not something that just is objective and inherent. It's something that actually requires kind of sinking in into people's own heads. Um, Sorry, I had an echo in my ear, so that also helped me to push my ear, and now I don't hear my voice echoing in my head, which is nice. Uh, so in this social process of understanding, the author has their own original ideas that they're trying to write down. My words on this slide, my original, this is my own understanding of Weber's concepts. Uh, and there's this time that we exist in, whether you're watching this video the day I upload it or you're watching it a week later. It's 2024, there's an election this year, it's summer, it's warm. All that context probably doesn't shape our understanding of Weber a whole lot though. But uh, when you're reading stuff from people hundreds of years ago, that context matters a lot more. And then there's the reader and listener and their understanding. If they're practicing hermeneutics, they're kind of taking into account their guesses about the author's original intent, which goes beyond just the words they wrote down on the page. So this is Verstehen. That's all part of Weber's idea of Verstehen, which is like social understanding. So thinking contextually, and Weber sought to use the tools of hermeneutics in this idea of Verstehen in order to understand people, society, and history with the detail that Bible scholars use to study scripture. So really taking a close look at society. And the irony here is that Weber really wanted to emphasize quantitative macro level sociology. So using surveys and large data sets to understand the social world. He thought that was really, really great. But it's funny that he also thinks that true understanding really takes a lot of detail and focus, which is much more a strength of qualitative sociology from observations and interviews with maybe a smaller quantity of respondents or people that you're studying, but they're like case studies giving you the details of social life really on the surface. Uh, so some more concepts that help us understand Weber's contributions to sociology and social science more widely are ideal types. So ideal types we kind of use, honestly, when we stereotype people, we might be thinking of kind of an ideal type in uh, a way that is maybe oppressive. Sociologist Patricia Hill Collins writes about controlling images, which is you built upon the legacy of Weber's concept of ideal types. Patricia Hill Collins, her controlling images just refer to stereotypes about a specific kind of person, and it's this whole it's a negative stereotype kind of that controls one's life opportunities because people expect bad things from them based on certain social characteristics. But for Weber, ideal types is just this general type of tool that looks at something in its most extreme form. So there's this ideal type of a crocodile hunter. You might think of Steve Irwin, and that one guy is basically the ideal type of someone who's going out and grabbing wild animals with an Australian accent and cargo shorts on and stuff. Um, they are an exaggerated version. Real life is not exactly like any one ideal type. We create ideal types in our minds as sociologists and as social thinkers in order to have reference points to compare, like, all right, you're 80% an animal lover and you're 34% an environmentalist. So we could look at people's uh many autobiographical posters and make sense of things that way. Uh, I do apologize. Those posters are, I can't upload the files too big when I try to merge them all together. I did sort through all the people who said no and cut those out and deleted them, but still, so maybe I won't share those posters. But sorry, I got sidetracked. Um, One example of ideal types is an example from my own work. I wrote a paper co-authored with some of my graduate student peers, and then also Dr. Victoria Reyes from Gender Studies helped us. And we talked about three different types of professors. So these are ideal types. So it's not like any one professor is perfectly this pure form of an ideal type, but there was the advocate professor, which Dr. Reyes was aspiring to be like, which is responding to student needs and meeting students where they're at so that their learning is contextualized in their own lives. It's not just meeting arbitrary standards of achievement based on stuff from the past, but instead, the advocate type of professor is one who really prioritizes student well-being, un- and then that's the foundation for learning to grow on. So that's something I aspire to as well. But there were two other ideal types. One was authoritarian, which is when a professor is too controlling of a class and too demanding and inflexible. And then absentee, which is when a professor's unresponsive, does not give enough information, etc. Definitely in an asynchronous class like this, absenteeism is a risk. So I'm trying to be as quick and responsive to emails and stuff when I get them. So that's a small example of using Weber's tool of ideal types. Stratification. So I'm going to talk about stratification by Weber now. This is later that day. I actually went to the hospital. I got sick. They gave me medicine. I'm feeling mostly better. I think I'm all good, hopefully. Um, duh, 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 duh. So stratification in Weber's view, there's different ways of looking at social stratification. So Marx would look at stratification as primarily based on class, and like we saw in the previous video, Marx saw class mainly between workers and owners, and so like the people who have to work for a living are one big majority, and then the people who can choose how to invest in new means of production or new things that really shape the world, like big investors, those are the capitalists. So, just because you bought a Charizard Pokemon card and it's going to gain in value and you have your own little personal investment, that's more of just something people would buy as a consumer. That's not being a capitalist. Capitalists are factory owners, that type of thing. That's Marx's view of stratification that we learned about in the previous video. And in Weber's mind, there's three terms that really help to see stratification and kind of the nuanced way that society has different kind of levels and different hierarchies, and it's not super straightforward. So class, in Weber's opinion, really does exist, and it's these socioeconomic conditions like money, wealth, property, education, job, and opportunities for work. And as you can see, these things are really intertwined. So your education helps you get a job, your job helps you get money, money helps you get wealth and property, so on and so forth. Wealth and property can help you have material comforts that give you momentum in other aspects of life that could help you get more education, or so on and so forth. Status is how others view you. It's your consumption, your vibe, or your social performance. So people's social status is like the clothes they wear, the car they drive, how they decorate their car and their clothes and their backpack and the stickers on their laptop or not. Uh, Status also is outside of our hands a little bit. It kind of depends, like we saw earlier with Verstehen, the hermeneutic, the speaker and listener. Status depends on the others who are viewing you too, and their judgments of you. So one's status in different places may change, and that's kind of a fun part of uh the as we'll read with Zygmunt Bauman of the liquid modern world, is we sometimes have unstable lives that change circumstances, but you have a fresh new mini life in each new life chapter, new job, new town you live in, stuff like that. So social status really is another way of hierarchy that could exist independent. So people could have a certain class, their education and job, but then their status is like kind of more like their style and stuff. And that can also give people more legitimate authority if people trust their taste. It can also give people new opportunities. Having higher social status could gain you access to clubs, could give you the opportunity to make new friends who then teach you things and open doors for you in life. Or just in stratification circles, you could just be a highly valued person in society. People think highly of you. Party, on the other hand, or on the third hand, Weber wrote about this mostly referring to political parties, so formal groups that people sign up to support a handful of causes in government or in their town. Party has gotten watered down since Weber's time, though, just because we have these two kind of zombie parties in Weber's view incorporates class, status, and party, and you can have different types of levels within these types of hierarchy, and it'd be reasonable for you yourself to come up with new ways to think about stratification and new axes that you could measure people on that are not status, party, or class. But the movement you can see from Marx to Weber is that Marx focused just on socioeconomic conditions, particularly if you're a worker or a capitalist or an owner, proletariat, bourgeoisie. Uh, and then Weber's kind of expanding it to more things. And then you'll see sociologists in the contemporary era, such as like Pierre Bourdieu, come up with even more nuanced ways of looking at stratification. And that includes like cultural capital, social capital, symbolic capital. Symbolic capital really echoes status from Weber. Um, so all these additional theories, this is what we do it all for in sociological theory. We're creating categories to help make sense of how people experience the social world, which includes stratification, like different positions and hierarchies. Um, so hierarchies were really important to Weber's sociology, and he thought about them as like, well, why do people get away with having more power than other people? And for authority to be legitimate, he discovered or philosophized people have to respect that authority. Listen to people who claim to have authority. So if someone makes no claim on authority, then you probably don't have to listen to them, or it's just up to you. It's your choice. Then you have the authority to choose that freedom. He made different kinds of authority, or these are kind of like ideal types. So these are categories. Sometimes real kinds of authority might be like a more fluid mixture of these ideal types. But Weber wrote a lot about rational legal authority, which is kind of the foundation for what we call bureaucracy nowadays. Rational legal authority you definitely see like in the military, strict chain of command, efficient decisions made. One person has the power, the other person doesn't. There's superordinates and subordinates, and decisions get made rapidly, but not like democratically. And Weber's kind of pessimistic but also optimistic, saying that the future belongs to bureaucratization. And he means that there's just going to be more and more people spending their days listening to orders and then giving orders to other people and just doing work efficiently. But the sad thing is, it's this efficient work to just maximize profit for the people who are investing in things, who have the power to shape the world, the capitalists, rather than any kind of democratically decided upon projects. So now we live in a world that mostly it's just free capitalists investing in what they want with the sole goal of maximizing their profits. And we'll look more at this process from Weber's view when we talk about the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism. Two other types of authority that Weber wrote about: charismatic authority. It's pretty straightforward. Through your charisma, you gain people's support. And then traditional authority is like appealing to customs and tradition. Religions kind of a mixture of rational, legal, and traditional authority. But then like stuff like within a family structure or something, you don't have a constitution in your family that says we listen to dad about where we go on weekends, but mom gets to choose what we eat for dinner. It's not that rational legal. There's just traditions in the family, and people make their own traditions a little bit. So here's the Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. This is Weber's most famous book. He published it in 1905, so he has his law degree, his PhD, and he's gone through his whole mental breakdown for many, many years, and he was writing notes for this. And the ideas in the Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism are center around two systems of ideas. One system of ideas is the Protestant ethic, which comes from Calvinist Protestantism. Max Weber learned about this firsthand from his mom, who was this religion, and very, very disciplined, hardworking, ascetic, which means like declining worldly pleasures. Like, no, thank you. That's not for me. I'm going to heaven. And in Protestant Calvinism, people believe that you're predestined. You're either going to heaven, you're either going to hell. and that's predestined, but the way you get to shed light on your path to salvation is through hard work and being diligent. So you sort of uh, walk the walk in making it into being. It's a bit confusing, but it's a certain belief system where people think if you work really hard, pursue the ceaseless gaining of money, then you will go to heaven. And Max Weber connects this to a second system of ideas. So there are two systems of ideas relating to kind of help cause capitalism, not in a soul way. He said you'd have to be crazy to think that it's just this religion that led to capitalism as a whole global economic system. But he said this is one factor that really boosted capitalism's growth and ubiquity. So the spirit of capitalism, this other system of ideas, is the pursuit of endless profit. So, if there's a spirit of socialism, it's like to meet people's needs and have a happy and fulfilling life for everybody. Or that's my socialism. Maybe there's a gazillion different ways of thinking about socialism. And similarly too about capitalism. But Max Weber's view of capitalism was that it was this endless pursuit of personal profit, which is this industrious way of kind of fetishizing money and riches and wealth without really enjoying it in the, enjoy the ascetic person isn't stopping to smell the roses. They're trying to just get to point A to point B, live like a robot so that after your life you can go to heaven, with a lot of money, I guess. So that's what I got for Max Weber. Thank you so much for listening in these two editions of Max Weber videos. I think I do need to edit because I stumbled and paused and then yeah. Wow. Thank you.